And what I may do, just because I don't want to have the same. Actually, looks like it's okay. I'm gonna jump off of WebEx, but let me get the link. I'll post the link, but on my side, I need to jump off WebEx so I don't get feedback. But let me get the link first. Give me 1 second.
Easy guys. So Michael's put the link in the chat. So if you guys want to
All right. So get that up. Let me pull this up. This should be a whole lot cleaner doing it this way as well through this link. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna just play it. I'm gonna just play it on a loop, and I just want to make sure we can actually hear that and make sure it sounds a lot better than it did before.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no. And though in this life, make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up.
All right. Yeah. So when I talk, I think my mic may be paying left, but the music coming through, or is the music coming out left as well? So let me do a quick little edit, and let's see, can we fix that left music situation popping out? Cool. So I'm not worried about my voice too much. I'm gonna stick to the music because that's what it's all about in this session anyway. Cool. So let me move the mic closer. How's that, Renee? Is that a little bit better? I'm on the mic now. It's pretty much right in my face. Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and let's actually get into this process of how I actually go through when I mix a song. So I'm pretty sure everybody can see the screen okay now. I go in, and if you can't read it down below, I have all these individual. I have all these. Now I'm loud. So now I have all these individual tracks down here. I have my drums, I have bass, I have electric guitar, I have a chord keyboard. Looks like I have a lead vocal here as well. I have some overdubs of somebody playing keyboard, and I have a trumpet as well. So when was the last time you guys actually heard like a live recorded trumpet? So this should be a treat. I don't think people even play trumpet in songs anymore, but this is one of my good friends, Jonathan, who played trumpet on this, who's just a beast at all this stuff. Cool. So going back to my little PDF that I mentioned before, I like to clean things up. So if you notice when I play the track, I want you guys to pay attention to the little green bars that pop up. The audio levels should be pretty even here because what I've done here up top, you see where it says gain there? I've actually used this gain plugin to match everything. So I'm just gonna move some stuff around so you can see what I did to start with. So I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna play the music.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not
So you guys see how much beefier those drums got and how much louder they did when I actually adjusted that gain? It sounded good, but that's actually not what I want. I want to be able to go in and I want those drums to be level with everything because I'm not going to actually process them yet. So when I first got this track, the drums were super loud like they are right now, and everything else was kind of low on the actual song. So my job when I first actually mix a song is to actually get everything equal because when I add effects, it's gonna make the overall song super loud. So I want to start at a pretty low level. So if you notice here, if I play it back, it's probably playing at about -9 to 12 decibels. So I can add effects without actually clipping and making things too loud when I go in and play. So jumping back in there, I'm gonna pop over and I'll go, oh, good. I'll pop over and I'm just gonna do a quick balance and fix those drums real quick. So I'm gonna bring the music back in and I'll be stopping and starting because I got a feeling you guys won't be able to hear me over the music if I talk at the same time.
Make up your mind.
I'm just gonna turn those drums down a little bit.
Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever.
So that's exactly what I want. To begin, I want everything to be pretty much even. And just like I was saying when we were over on WebEx, we were talking about how most people, when I recorded this band, everything was at a different level. So this little blue gain plugin that I have up here, let me fix that so Joel gets off the screen. Give me a second. Thanks for moderating, Kaylin. I get lost in the sauce, like I said before, when I start playing around. So let's take that off the screen. I just seen that pop up from Adam about how I'm turning them down as well. So can you see the gain plugin that I have at the very top where it says gain? I'm actually using this gain knob to turn them up and down. They're instead of the actual fader. The reason being is that I'm not actually mixing yet. I'm actually just balancing out my levels on my song. So I want to keep these I want to keep these actual faders at a little even level here, and then I can use my gain knob to adjust it because what I'm doing, this gain knob actually adjusts the input. The sound is actually coming in, and this fader controls what's going out on the track, all those faders. So with this, cool. I think it's a little bit delayed as well from when I see the comments and when I talk. So I'll try to cover those, but I definitely just want to do that input gain first instead of affecting the output gain, which I'm going to do when I actually go in and mix. So I'm going to go ahead and keep rocking through this as well. And I'm just going to talk through my process and what I'm doing. So first things first, I actually want to color code things. I got rid of a lot of tracks, so it shouldn't take me too long. But inside of Logic, if you actually want to color code so it's easier to work, with my system, I actually go in and I like to have my drums to be red, right? Because my drums are hot, quote unquote. So if I actually right click and assign track color, it comes up and I can choose red there. But I also want my region to be colored as well. So if I do color region by tracks, now I have that colored, and I'm going to quickly go through and do this for everything else. And feel free to drop a question in the chat at any time and I'll cover it as well, especially if it pertains to how to do things in Logic. But I'm just going through and doing a quick setup so you can see how I actually start. And I'll try not to bore you to death. I'll do this real fast. So and I like to do my bass brown because of the brown note. It's just my sense of humor. But if you open up any of my tracks, everything that's bass will be brown. And then I like electric guitars to be green. And some of these is just because guitar green. Oh, of course, my mixtapes are red because they're hot fire. All right, let's go through. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Wish it was a faster way to do this, but it's not. And let's make that green. Let's do that. Color regions by track. Sign track color. And then I have my keyboard. For most of my instruments, I don't know, I like purple for my instruments. Keep in mind, you can have your own system, but the thing I stress, if you're doing this, and not just for music, like I know, Renee, you've been drawing a lot. I know a lot of you guys work on video. This part is boring, but it's super important to actually arrange, because when you actually start working creatively, you don't want to have to worry about, oh, what am I working on right now? Am I working on the vocal? Am I working on the keyboard? If you have it color coded with a system that works for you, you'll know exactly what you're working on. That way you don't have to really think about it. You can just look at the color and make those adjustments without slowing yourself down. Two more to go. All right, here's some trumpet here as well. I may play a little bit of this trumpet by itself so you can hear Jonathan actually, how it sounds in the studio when somebody's playing trumpet. Ooh. Good point, Luke. Real good point. I forgot about that. So this is what an untreated trumpet sounds like.
Won't ya just make up your mind? Won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey.
All right, cool. So I got my color coding going. If you notice down here below, I can actually see what's what when it comes to colors. And let's see if this still works. It's been a while. So now I have everything set up the way I want it. So I can jump in and actually start doing some mixing. So like I said before, the most important thing for me, and for those of you guys who never touched Logic before, I'll probably walk you through what I'm actually doing and where to find things as well. So it probably makes sense if I actually start from up here at the top from what we see. So for our sake in the mixing, we're only really worried about from where it starts EQ. Everything else is if we're actually recording and we need that 48 stands for 48 volt phantom power, like the mic I'm using right now requires it. If I was recording vocals, I would have that on, but I have an interface, so I really don't need it. So we're actually looking at input. So right now, when I click that button, when you see those two interlocking circles, it lets me know if I want to make that a stereo file or a mono file, right? For the sake of this, I'm going to keep them in stereo. Normally, I would make them mono so I can actually go in and pan them one by one, but to save time and make it easier and sound a lot better for us in the mixing process, we'll keep them stereo there. And then we have our audio effects. So here's where all the audio effects and things are going to happen inside of here. So if I actually click on one there, now my plugins come up. Keep in mind, I have tons of different plug ups from different people inside of here. But for the sake of this, I'm only using what's in Logic. So if you guys use your Logic redemption code, you'll pretty much have everything from where it says amps and pedals. The recent is probably some stuff I was using that you may not have access to, but everything under amps and pedals down to utility, you're going to have that in your Logic when you get it and open it up as well. So first things first, I don't have to go into plugins. I can just click on EQ on that individual track, and I'm going to solo some stuff here. So I'm going to pull the drums up, and I may solo them, and I'm going to go ahead and clean some stuff up. Yeah, I'll show you. So if you have a look, it's a default Logic plugin. So Joel, when I go in and I jump over here and I go over to utility and I go to gain, it says stereo. That's where I got that gain plugin from. So just to do it one more time, I'll pull it up. I'll get rid of it and pull it up again. So let's go no plugin. Let's go in. Let's go down to utility. Let's go gain. Let's go stereo. And there's that gain plugin. And now I need to reset it as well. So I'm going to quickly reset those levels. Give me.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya?
All right, now that I got the levels reset, I want to go through and we're going to talk about EQ. I think I did this a while ago in one of my things, but I want to let you guys see how it actually works. So very simply, where you guys see where it says 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz or 20,000 kilohertz, what that actually stands for is the human range of hearing, right? So most of us can't hear all the way down to 20 hertz, and we can't hear up to 20,000. The average person probably can hear starting at around 30 to 40 and then up to about 16 or so. Yes, Adam. So as a guide, we want all of our max levels not to 0 dB. I'm actually going beneath that because if you look at the fader, 0 is at the top. So if I go back to it and I play it, you'll notice
Make up your mind, won't ya?
most of my tracks are actually at around -12. If I go all the way up to 0, we're going to start clipping. So I'll show you what that means. You'll be able to hear it too. I'm going to adjust this
Make up your
gain.
mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya?
So 0 dB would be way too loud because you see where it says 7.5? We're actually clipping inside of there. So you can see that red where it pops up. So I wouldn't actually want to go up that high. And keep in mind, I'm actually looking at my faders to the right, not the one to the left. I'm looking at the ones to the right, the little small strips right here. So that's a good point. Right. Renee, sorry about that. I was just using that for an example. So keep your hand on your volume button for this because I'm going to be changing levels. Not that drastically, but I will be changing levels. But I'll warn you before next time. Sorry. So let me go ahead and pull that back down and adjust it.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind.
Cool. So I'm happy with that. We got it going. So let's jump back into EQ and look at what that's all about. So remember, like I said before, most of us can't really hear all the stuff down here. I may keep it in for bass, but what I'm going to do something called a high pass filter. So I'm going to do this on most of my tracks besides my bass. So if I click that little fader there and you see that slope come up,
Make up your mind.
I'm just going to go in and drag
won't
it.
ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no. And though in this life, make up your mind, won't ya?
So what that EQ actually just did was take out pretty much most of the bass from the drums. See your overlay screens. So which overlay screens can you not see? Can you see my actual EQ? Is it all right, Adam? Can you see the EQ and stuff on the screen as I talk about it? So jumping into here now, we're going to keep going with that EQ. So what I did before is that I actually jumped in and I was playing with a high pass filter. Keep in mind, I would never do this on a drum track because the drums, right, the kick has all the bass in it. So I want to keep that bass in. Let me see what I'm seeing on screen. Aha, I see. I just noticed that as well. Let me see. Maybe I need to drag it over because it shows up on my side. Let me jump into my software and reshare that screen because you definitely need to be able to see what's happening here. That's just my overlay. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to see if I can throw it up on the screen. Let me jump over to screen. Yep, screen sharing. Create Logic Pro. Aha. Yeah, I figured it out. Now I got the EQ up on the screen. I just got to switch back and forth as I'm doing it. Ah, got it. Sweet. So now you guys should be able to see my EQ on the screen and not everything else in the background.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay for.
Cool. Sweet. That's all right. I got the EQ up on the main screen. Let me see. Can you just share one whole monitor? Let me try that and see. Can we make that work? Show entire screen. Oh, wait. Yeah, I just switched it, Kim. Let me have a look. And now we're back to tracks. I feel like it's making me select which one I show. For whatever reason, it's not letting me show both together, which would be ideal. But since I know how to switch it now, whenever I start talking about a different thing, I'll just switch it to that. So when I start talking about EQ, I'll just put the EQ on the screen. When I start talking about compression, I'll put the compressor on the screen. It'll fill up the whole screen, but hey, at least we got that visual element to actually have a look at. So right now, I'm back on tracks, but I'm gonna jump back to EQ real quick, and that's probably gonna cover the whole screen. So we got it there. That's some color. And there's my EQ there. So let's keep going. We're gonna go with EQ here. And right now I have the EQ on the guitar. Keep in mind, this guitar is just a normal electric guitar, so it probably doesn't have a lot of elements that I want to keep inside below probably 50 to 100. If I want to find out, I'm gonna play the song again, and the EQ you guys see on the screen is just for the guitar.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever.
See how when I go that high, I actually get rid of the guitar? So I probably would keep it somewhere down
Make up your
there.
mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind.
Cool. So that was pretty quick and dirty, but what I did is that I actually just pulled up all the noise in the guitar that we don't want. It's not a bass guitar, so everything you see down here is just rubbish that we really don't need in our song from an electric guitar. And by getting rid of that, I'm actually making space for the bass guitar, for the kick drum, and other things that really sit in those lower frequencies, right? So I've done it on the guitar. I'm gonna quickly go through, and I'm actually gonna do that on some other instruments as well. So I have my keys here as well. And I may solo this stuff. Normally when I mix, I actually mix everything in context because that's how we're actually gonna hear it. So I'll hardly ever solo. I actually make my adjustments while everything is playing because I wanna know how that affects the rest of the song. But I think for this tutorial, it's probably easier for you guys to hear it if I actually go in and just solo that individual instrument as I mix it. So what I'm gonna do now, right now on the screen you're seeing guitar. So let me switch that and let's get the actual keyboard to come up now. Not that. Cool, so there's my keyboard there. I'm gonna start EQing it.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Wurlitzer as well. So we actually had to carry this into the studio. It was pretty pretty heavy. But anyway, we got that. Remember, I'm actually not doing any additive EQ with this. I'm actually just cutting out stuff I don't want to make space, right? So I know a lot of you guys probably sitting here like, oh, you should turn things up. I don't really turn things up until the end because remember, when I recorded this in the studio, I got my mic's positioned correctly. I got everything sounded pretty much how I wanted it to sound. So the EQ is just gonna be for effect later. All I'm doing right now is just getting rid of unnecessary room noise that we may have had in there in this particular instrument. So I'm going to jump over now, and I'm going to just keep on going, and I'm going to jump over and just go through track by track. And I'll try to speed it up a little bit and talk less and just let you guys enjoy, but feel free to fill the comments up. It's a bit weird for me because it's a bit delayed as well, but I'll react to the comments as I'm doing it. But I'm just going to go through and speed it up just a little bit so I'm not holding you guys too long, and you can actually start to hear some of these changes I'm making. That's a great question about some of the instrument frequencies that may need boosting. It's going to be the ones that are actually prominent in that instrument. So I always say that you should always use your ears when you're mixing, all right? But if you're just beginning, I also have a visual aid here. So if I'm looking at this, I can already tell that there's a lot of information happening inside of here. And if I wasn't sure, I can go in here, I can boost it, but I want to make it more narrow. So I'm going to use this little Q is what this is called to make my little adjustments narrow. And I want you guys to hear the difference. I'm going to boost some different frequencies as you can hear. Let's bring them up a little higher. Warning, you may want to turn it down because this may get harsh. So you guys hear that? Let me stop it for a second. So if you heard that little whistling sound, that's actually how I find out the frequencies that are going to be painful for your ears to hear. So if I was actually going through and mixing this, I would just go yoink and actually pull out that frequency, right? Because I know it gives that whistle sound at a high level. So I would actually just pull that out because it's giving us that little whistling effect that we actually don't want. That means it's one of those harsh frequencies that I spoke about before. So this is a very easy way to find harsh frequencies, but it's a good way to find pleasing frequencies as well, just by being a little bit more drastic with your adjustments. So I can actually hear that I like that frequency there. But remember, I'm not going to boost it yet because I'm going to use a different EQ to actually boost it in. But I just want to kind of answer the question here about what are some frequencies to boost. But it's always the most prominent and non-harsh frequencies in the actual instrument. Remember, if it's recorded right, you don't really have to boost anything because that's the easiest way to get a harsh and brittle sounding track is to go in and just start boosting frequencies everywhere. You want to try to get it as right as you can at the source. So you can EQ stuff when you're recording it in if you know what you're doing. That way on this part, when we're actually mixing, you save yourself a lot of time and you don't have to worry about any of that extra noise or accidentally making your song sound a bit harsh inside of there. Cool. So remember, all I'm doing is cutting right now. Subtractive EQ. I'm cutting out stuff that we don't need to leave space for other things. So I'm going to keep rolling. Feel free to drop questions in the comments, but let's keep going.
Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no. And though in this life, make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind.
And what I can tell right now is when I actually did this track, I did it in a program called Up. I just noticed I don't have anything on the screen for you guys. Sorry. Let me bring that up. I swear I need an extra person to controlling my screen while I can just focus on the mixing part. But let me bring the screen up real quick. Sorry, guys. Cool. So there's the EQ there. But what I noticed is that I actually went in, and I'm pretty sure when I recorded this, I had an EQ on it already cutting out these lower frequencies, because what I see here is that there's nothing down there on the low frequencies when I play it. But I'm paranoid, so I'll just cut them even more just to make sure I don't have that extra noise in there.
Make up your mind.
Now we can see it's nothing
won't
there.
ya?
So I literally cut all that
Just
stuff
make up
out
your
before I brought it over to Logic.
mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever.
Cool. So I'm super happy with that. That's fine. It's recorded clean, so nothing too crazy there. And let's just keep going quickly, and let's go through and cut out some more EQ stuff as well. So here's some chords that Jonathan overdubbed. So I'm gonna do the opposite on these. That whirly is very rich. It sounds very good at the low end. So I'm not gonna really affect that. I'm not gonna change that. I'm gonna use a low pass filter to actually cut off the highs, because if you notice, he was playing lower octave stuff, so we don't need most of the stuff that we actually have in our highs there. And this will leave space in our mix for other stuff as well. Let's play it. There it is. So remember, I went opposite on this one, and I cut out the extra stuff in the high end that we actually don't need. Cool. Let's keep it rolling. This trumpet. Let's go ahead and pull the trumpet up. Get an EQ on it. Let me make sure it's actually showing on the screen this time. Sorry. And it's not like Logic titles what they are. So sorry, guys. I got to sift through till I find the right source. That's my vocals. Let me close the stuff I don't need. Bear with me for a second. By overdubs, by vocals, and only trumpet. There it goes. So now let's see what the trumpet has that it doesn't really need that we can cut out here. So we'll do a quick high pass on that. Like I said before, I probably already went through and did this before I exported the files, or when I recorded it. I probably had a high pass filter on the EQ for that. But just to show you what I would do if it was something I didn't record myself, I'll just show you some of the things. This is all housekeeping and cleaning. I'm going to do these last couple tracks, and then I'm going to actually start mixing so you can start to hear the difference as well inside it. And we'll talk about things like compression and actually adding reverb and delay to stuff as well. Let me bring those background vocals in now. And keep in mind, just not to keep you guys all day, I probably won't bring it up on the screen. I'll probably talk you through it because you guys probably seen enough of my EQs now to know what I'm getting at inside of there. And feel free to bring an EQ up on your screen if you're playing along with the Billie Eilish song as well.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no.
Cool. So the vocals fine. And that's it. So I got all those tracks cleaned up. I want to pause for a second. I know there's a bit of a delay, but I may take any questions from you guys about what I just did. I just want to make sure if this is something you want to do, that you understand the steps I did. Sorry about the screens and switching and stuff, but I think it's better for me to focus on this and then go back and at least show you one reference of how I do it as well. But I'll switch the screen over now, but feel free to just throw a question in there. Sweet, silence is golden. So I'm gonna keep going, and we'll jump in. If there's no questions about that first part that I did, I'll jump in now, and we're just gonna start actually mixing and start actually affecting some of the sounds that we have here as well. So I'm gonna keep rolling. We'll jump in, and let's actually think about. Remember, I'm just looping one part of the song. I'm looping the chorus right now because that's where everything is playing. Here in a little bit, once I get a rough mix that I like, I'll go through and play everything else as well. But to begin with, let's just jump in, and I'll keep rolling. And we're actually going to stay on this main track screen here. I'm not going to add any effects yet because I actually want to route these. So hopefully questions will come up during this part, because when I jump in and I actually do certain effects. So right now I actually want to use compression. I talked a little bit. I don't know if some of you guys were there when I explained what compression was, but at a very basic level, what compression is going to do is to actually even out all my sounds, right? So when we normally, let me jump to my face real quick. Cool. Back to me with my microphone in my face. So what compression is actually going to do, guys, compression is actually going to let us make things even. So when I actually go in and I'm playing drums, right, I'm probably playing at a different level. So we're going to have peaks and we're going to have valleys as we go in and play. That compression is going to allow us to kind of tighten everything down so nothing gets too loud and nothing's too soft inside of there. That's what compression is all about. It just evens out our performance. Keep in mind, if we overdo it, we can actually take all the life out of a track as well by over compressing something. So when I do compression, I like to do it lightly, and I like to use my ears to actually know what I'm doing inside of here, so as to not to make the mistake of squashing out all the dynamics or the feeling from that performance. But at a very basic level, that's what compression does. It makes quiet things louder, and it takes the loud things and pull them down a little bit so nothing's too loud for us, and puts them in a nice little box there for us as well. So it's super important to make sure you have compression on. Let me see. Kim said she's cutting out. Is anybody else cutting out? Is the stream going okay? Cool. So, interesting. Let me see. So I'm using my mesh network. It should be pretty clear, but I'm just gonna keep rolling. I may have to. You guys may have to go back and watch the replay of something else. If it gets too choppy, just let me know, and we can stop it, or I can keep going, and the replay will hopefully be a lot clearer as well once it processes. But I'm gonna keep rolling there. I see, but okay. So Adam figured out a workaround. Thanks for that. Cool. So I'll just keep rolling. I'm gonna switch back over to my Logic screen here. Sweet. So we'll keep going there, and we're actually gonna go ahead and start mixing the song now. This is my favorite part. We went in, we've added our EQ out of the stuff we don't need on most of the tracks. Everybody's good? Sweet. So we're gonna EQ out the stuff we don't need on most of the tracks there, and now we're gonna jump in and get it rolling.
Make up your mind, won't ya?
So the first thing I'm gonna do right now is do my insert level effects. So right now, I wanna jump in and I wanna beef those drums up. You notice the drums don't sound that beefy. So if I solo these drums, they're not really hitting you in the chest like I like personally. So that's what they sound like right now. I'm gonna go in, and under audio effects, I'm actually gonna add in a compressor. So you have these different levels. Dynamics is where all my compressors live. So dynamics, compressor, stereo compressor. And now you guys are gonna need to see this compressor, so let me quickly switch to it. Cool. So now that you guys see my compressor there, let me walk you through what's actually happening. It's not as intimidating. It's not as intimidating as it sounds, or as it looks rather. I'm gonna show you guys, I like to use this compressor. It's more of a tube sounding studio compressor. If you notice, I haven't touched anything. I haven't made any changes, but if I mute it and start it again, you'll actually hear the difference. So let's mute it. That's no compression whatsoever. remember, all I'm doing is quote unquote plugging my drums into the compressor. I hadn't even twisted a knob yet. Listen to it with the compressor on. How beefy is that? But before I do anything, I'm actually going to walk you guys through and talk about what these knobbies do, the old knobbies here. So threshold, once again, if we're thinking about threshold, there's a certain level that a sound has to be before it gets affected by the compressor, before it gets made louder or pulled down based on what I'm doing with my controls here. So if I go in and I pull down my threshold, let's turn it back on. So right now, that shouldn't be grabbing much, but as I pull it up, and we can see my meter as well, now we're actually grabbing pretty much everything, because remember, most of my songs above, negative, it's at -12. So as long as I set my threshold to grab anything below that, I'm going to start affecting it, right? As soon as I hit that, you'll start hearing the effect take place. But I can push it even further to get more of a compressed effect inside of there. So let's keep it rolling. And remember, I'm not too concerned. Great point. So great point with not losing too much dynamic range there, Adam. What I'm making sure I do is that I don't over compress it, right? Because I'm going to show you here on the meter. If I take this threshold and I pull it over here, the higher this little meter is here on my left where it says -14, the more compressed my track. Look at this. I'm losing -20 dBs of gain here. So I am over compressing this like crazy. So if I was to actually take that waveform and bounce it out and let you look at it, it'll look like a square, right? It won't be a lot of peaks and valleys inside of it. So we just make sure we don't set our threshold too low to actually over compress our song. Remember, if I use my ratio, I can over compress as well. But right now we're just looking at threshold. So I've gave an overview of threshold and talk about what it does. Remember, it just grabs sounds and starts affecting them starting at a certain decibel level, right? So if we go too far, we're going to grab everything and just squash all the life and dynamics out of it. So for me, I'm happy with it over here, but I don't want to take out too much of my dynamic range as well. So I'm probably going to try to get it to around -5. So I'm going to play with threshold for a second. And I'm going to A and B it. So without. Cool. So I went in and I set my threshold. I'm happy with what I have threshold wise. Now let's talk about ratio as well. Because remember, this is going to be how it grabs the actual audio and pulls it up or down inside of here. So with this ratio, that's 3 decibels. For every 3 decibels is pulling down 6, or I can go 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. So the basics of this, if I go above 10, I'm actually limiting and squashing all the dynamics out of my track if I go too far. So for me, I like to go in and set my ratio something subtle. So for every 3 decibels that we're getting in, let's just pull it down and compress it by 1 decibel, 3 to 1 inside of there. So I would use something like this to get started. But if I actually want to squash something and actually make it louder or give that pumping effect like dance music, I may jump in and actually go crazy like 10 to 1. But let's listen to it. You guys will hear it straight away. I got to adjust my threshold so you can hear it as well. Cool. So we went in there. I've did a very easy ratio, nothing too crazy. Remember, anything above 10 to 1 is extreme. For me, when I'm doing my beginning stuff, 3 to 1 to 6 to 1 is where I want to stay. And then I use that makeup game because remember, if I look at my chart here, I can see that I'm actually losing 5 decibels of gain or volume. So I'm making it back in makeup. A lot of people make the mistake of actually going in and cranking this makeup gain super high, but that's an easy way to lose dynamics and actually ruin your song and make things start clipping as well when you play around too much with makeup gain. The only reason I'm using my makeup gain is to make up what I've lost when I went in and adjusted my threshold and ratio, right? That's very subtle, very easy there as well. And then my attack, what this actually tells me is how fast the actual compressor is grabbing that waveform, right? That's what attack is all about. So if you actually want to get a pumping effect, I can make it grab it super fast. And so right now the music's actually pumping, the drums. So I have my attack set too low. I don't want that a pumping effect, but if you do dance music, it may be something useful. Remember, all attack does is how fast the compressor grabs the front of that waveform and lets it go. So if it's grabbing it super fast and letting it go, we're gonna get a pumping effect, right? Inside of there. For this is medium is happy. When it comes down to this, I'm happy just to keep it medium and listen with my ears to hear what I like with attack and release. Attack is grabbing, release is letting go. And remember, we need to hear the rest of the song. Yes, Adam. That's what that makeup gain is actually doing. It's post compression, but it's gonna be post threshold and ratio with makeup. So it wouldn't be pre because I don't have it set to pre-fader, which I could do over here on the right on the track's view. But everything I'm doing right now is gonna be post threshold and ratio and compression inside of them. Just making up what I lost with the compression. So post compression in that sense. Cool.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway.
I want to point out something as well. You see why it was super important to actually, before I added this compressor on, to make sure that this was low around -12, because look at my fader now. Heaps loud.
Make up your mind, won't ya?
So this is when I start actually using the output faders.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta
Because I don't want anything to go into the red. If I feel like I've got most of my actual inserts on it, I'm happy with going yellow, but I don't want anything hitting 0 because I need to always leave room to master it, to make it louder, right? For different mediums. Cool. So I did a quick little drum compression there. I'm going to keep focusing on compression. I'm going to move over to my actual bass guitar as well. This is going to sound cool. Bass is one of my favorite things to actually affect. So you guys are going to hear this bass pretty good. So let me get it on the screen for you. Let me see here. Come on. Here we go. And never the first choice, I swear. Cool. So that should be compression for my bass there. And remember, we're going to go through the same steps we did before, but there's no set like settings. A lot of people ask me like, what should I set my threshold at? What should I set my ratio, my makeup, my attack? It's all depending on what the other elements are doing to your song, right? So the best thing to do is just use your ear. Like even for you guys, I'm sure you heard straight away when I was making drastic changes, you could hear those changes. Even the subtle ones should come through. That's why it was super important to make sure the audio was clear so you guys can hear the difference that a very subtle change makes when we're actually mixing. So let's jump back in and keep rolling with our bass now. So let's hear it without first, and I'll solo it for a second, and then we'll do bass and drums together. So that's that bass by itself. That's bringing that compression in. We can even hear the hum from the amp. I'm slowing down my attack and release real quick. Let's hear that in the drums together. All right, I'm happy with that. Let's just keep it moving. Pop in any questions you have, guys. But I think for the sake, especially on the replay, it'll be good for people just to see this whole process and me go through it. But I will take any questions as well, because I'm sure a bunch of stuff does come up as I go through this super quick. Cool. So I'm super happy with my drums and my bass. Let's check the guitar out. Let's go ahead and bring some stuff in for that as well. And remember, I'm only doing compression right now. I hadn't even done any like other effects as well.
Make up your mind.
Adam, not at all. Because remember, this is a live band recording, right? So if I was doing like a super clean like pop thing, I may go in and get rid of those frequencies, and you can do it. But this is a very organic type song, right? Like these guys, a lot of these musicians actually playing a jazz band, and I really don't want to go in and take away from their effect, because when you listen to a record that was recorded live, you want it to sound like it was recorded live. So if I make it too clean, we're going to actually lose the actual feeling of the song. So it's super important when you're making music to think about the feeling that you want to get. So for this is a very organic, earthy sounding type of track. So I don't want to make it sound too over processed and too electronic. So I actually wouldn't take that hum out, because that's what it would sound like in the room, if that makes sense. Cool. So those first three things are cool with compression. Let's bring that keyboard in, check those out. A little trick as well. You guys probably noticed this in other apps. Instead of me adding my compression in over and over again, I may just do a quick hold down Option and drag, and I can just use that same effect with the same settings that I did on the previous one. Option, drag over inside of there to add those same effect plugins. And if I highlighted a bunch of them, I can Option drag it across. But for the sake of this, most of my tracks are different. If I was doing like a bunch of, say, vocal stacks, and they were recorded with the same mic, same placement, same room, it's just stacking different levels of vocal harmonies, I may do something like this. I just chuck over the plugins over the whole thing if I wanted to, by Option dragging, or just selecting all of them at once and then Option dragging. Cool. So jumping back over here, let's keep rolling with our keyboard. Remember, I'm doing a lot more soloing than I normally would, just so you guys can hear it. For me, I would be doing all of this while everything is playing, but I think for a tutorial, it's probably better if you'd actually hear what's happening. But I'll put something on the screen for you now. Here we go. Sweet. So now we're going to jump in and play with this keyboard.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever.
So one thing I noticed straight away, that keyboard was actually running a little hotter than the rest of the instruments. So the reason being is that the keyboard player has control of his gain, right? So what he was doing, he probably cranked it up so he could really hear it and feel it. But how that affects my actual mix is that as soon as I add an effect to it, it gets louder. So I may go to that gain knob and actually pull it down a little bit more before we go in and add additional effects to it, just so I can keep it under control and it doesn't drown out the rest of the instruments.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't
And at this point, this is when I actually start panning things left to right. So if you guys have heard me on the video wall, you probably heard me say that when we actually see a band, they're not all lined up straight behind each other. So if you guys look at my actual panning here, everything's actually in the middle, right? So we don't want that. We want to actually put everything in its own space on the actual screen. So what I would actually do here, I would go in and I'm going to start panning things. Remember, drums and bass are the center of my song, so I'm not really going to move them around. They're right in the middle. They're going to anchor that song. But if I think about a stage, I want to spread them out like if they were on stage or how they were in the studio. So the guitarist is not going to be in the middle, right? The guitarist could be panned left or right. The secret to this is that I'm never going to go all the way, right? I want to go leave myself space to put these at different levels, right? You know, maybe a little bit left, left center, all the way right, etc. inside of there. So I'm just going to go pan these maybe 25, quarter of the way to the right. And we're going to pan the actual keyboard a quarter of the way to the left inside of there. And I got to just hear it just to make the difference as well, but I'm just doing this without listening. We have a lead vocal here. I'm going to keep a bit in the center as well. I want to keep that pretty much right down the middle. I do have some keyboard chords and overdubs here that I can stick. And let's put them over there. And now that's the trumpet. I may make the trumpet a bit more extreme to one way down there. Those are background vocals, I'm pretty sure. So a little trick I would do with these, if I would actually make two of these and actually put them out of place. So I'll just do it and show you what I'm talking about here. So remember, what I've just done now, a lot of people think that, oh, I want to make my background vocals and pan them left and right. So you do this and you think you're actually hearing it. You're not. You're actually just hearing it 6 decibels louder because it's in the same place. It cancels each other out due to phase relationships. So I'm going to jump in here now. And I just want to nudge it. I'm talking about the most subtle nudge we've ever heard inside of here. So I'm going to have to change my snap value inside of here. Let's do snap off. And I'm just going to do the super subtle nudge inside of here to actually get these vocals off, but not off too much to where you hear it, just off enough to change the phase relationship. So if I go now, we should be able to hear that. I'm going to play them together and see, can we hear them left and right?
make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey.
See what happens if we go too far?
I'm not here to stay forever.
Has to be very subtle.
No.
Let's put them back right there.
So in this life, make up your mind.
Cool. I'm happy with that. So we can roll with that just very subtly so I can actually hear them separately, because if I kept them the same with the same phase, they would just be louder. You wouldn't actually hear them properly throughout the left and right. So that's a different conversation, but that's something you can do. Just slightly move them if you do use the duplicate effect. Keep in mind, I probably got other takes of this. I could have added in and put it left or right. If you ever get to the point where you're recording yourself or somebody in the studio, just do extra takes. That way you don't have to duplicate. You can just use that additional take that you have there and put it left or right. Cool. So now I have those two there. Let's quickly name it. And I'm just going to use BGV, background Vox, right for that sense. And I'm going to change this to BGV left inside of there. Cool. So we have that. Let's keep it rolling.
Make up your mind.
And remember, I haven't even went in and added any compression to them. I know we're going a bit long, so I'm probably not going to do the compression. I'm just going to show you guys how I actually add like delays and reverbs and onto things to actually give it more ambience in the track as well. So, good call, Adam. Let me pull it back up. I got wrapped up in it all. Sweet. Now the screen's back up. I'm going to go in here now, and I think I'm just going to show you guys how I route and do effects, and I'll set you free. I don't want to have you guys here all day inside of there, but I'm just going to show you how I route things for effects like reverbs and delays and stuff like that as well. And what I probably do after I do that, if you guys are cool, we can hop back into Kaylin's room, and it's easier just to have a quick chat to wrap it up. If you guys want to have a chat about it afterwards, just let me know. We can jump back into that. But let me do the last part. I'm just going to show you guys how I route things in Logic to actually add effects as well. Because remember, I don't want to actually add reverbs and delays on the actual insert of the track up here, because I don't want to affect the track itself. I want to send it somewhere to be affected so I can control the levels. So without over explaining, let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to take both of these background vocals where it says bus 3. I already have an effect over here with a third-party plugin, which is Valhalla Plate. Ooh, yeah, good point. Luke, I definitely can. All I have to do is turn the effects off. We'll go through and turn some effects off, and you'll be able to hear the difference straight away, especially after I go in and I put these effects on it. You'll be able to hear that. So let's go ahead. I have my reverb effect already set up. If you want to know how to do that, if you're doing any reverbs or time-based delays and things, all you need to do, Logic makes it super easy, is select your track, go to bus, and select it one that doesn't have an aux beside it. So I'll go bus 4. And now I've just created that additional bus there. I think it went to aux 1. Bus says it right there. So it says aux 1, but it's bus 4. Whatever I add on there, let's add a delay there real quick. Let's just go very basically. Let's add echo. And for this, I'll use a preset. Let's just do something simple. Let's use the triplet bass. Let's do that, because we'll be able to really hear this as I bring it. I want this to stay 100% wet. And now I'm going to start sending the background vocals to this actual effect. So just for the sake of easiness, we'll put delay there. We'll put, that's really nothing. We'll put reverb there. And now you guys are really going to hear the difference with these vocals.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no. And though in this life, make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no. And though in this life, make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me.
Let's pull that down. So, sorry, I got in experimentation mode for a second. I tend to do that. So we'll keep it simple for the sake of this, but ask me any questions with what I'm doing, because I know sometimes this can be complex. All I'm doing is sending tracks to effects instead of putting it directly on the track, because if you notice, it really affects how the track sounds. So I actually want to use a bus or a send as opposed to sticking it right on when it comes down to that. And I'm just doing a bit of cleanup. I just realized I took my reverb off and put a delay, got distracted. Let's go back to Space Designer there. And I'll keep in mind, I took off the one I had before because I wanted you guys to see that Logic has all these things in there for you, right? So for me, I only really want to use a very basic soft plate for this. You guys will be able to hear this as well as I send it.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya?
So that's dry.
Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever.
So here's where this gets fun, because I don't have to necessarily add a compressor on all these different vocal tracks I have. I can easily just do a very quick send. Let's do bus here. Let's do bus 5 real quick. Let's go in. Let's add a compressor on here, and let's just send the vocals, all of them, to the same one. So if I go in here now, very basic. Matter of fact, just for the sake of time, I'll use a quick preset, even though I'm anti-preset most of the time. Let's do studio vocal there. And now I'm just going to start sending more of the vocal to make it a bit louder and more present to my actual compressor.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no. And though in this life, make up your mind.
Cool. So I went through, I'm sorry there's a bit all over the place, but it's kind of hard to show and present at the same time. I need my video off. But I went through and showed a couple of things, guys. I won't go in because I noticed at the time now we are running a bit long. I'm sorry to keep you guys so long. I just went through and showed the starting points of what I do when I actually go in and mix a song. Keep in mind there would be a lot more sends with different delays, different reverbs. I would probably go in and use a different EQ to add in different textures and frequencies into some of those songs that I like as well. And then we have to master it for a commercial release after this, which is a totally different session as well. So you guys see how involved this actually gets. But hopefully just gave you an oversight of what we can do. But Luke asked before about hearing before and after. So if I jump in here now, and I'm just going to turn off my inserts, and we're going to listen to it without the stuff that I added to it as well. And then we can wrap it up and we can jump back into WebEx for a second, then get out of here as well. So let me go ahead and bring it back now, and I'll start taking things off as well.
Make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever.
So there's our before with nothing on it at all. Now let's start bringing stuff back in.
This life, make up your mind, won't ya? Just make up your mind, won't ya? Gotta meet me halfway, honey. I'm not here to stay forever. No, 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 no. And though in this life.
So hopefully you guys heard the difference there as well. I didn't even turn on my last compressor here, but hopefully you guys heard the difference with the before and the after and the drastic changes we can make just by some very basic mixing. Keep in mind, I've had a very light touch on most of the stuff that I've done. I haven't overdone anything, but when we A and B, you can really hear what that difference sounds like there as well. So it's super important when you go in and you're doing things like this, if you guys ever do want to mix a song, do it subtle and do it step by step, and overall it's going to add to a major difference. Sometimes when you're in it and you're actually mixing, you're like, am I making it better? Am I making it worse? There as well. But just like Luke said, it makes the song sound a lot richer, a lot more fuller. I didn't even add all my different delay effects to actually have delay throws or showed how to filter out reverbs and EQs, but I don't want to make your guys' head explode with all that stuff. We may have to do a part 2 of this because I know we went a bit over time there. A part 2 of the next step of what this looks like. If you guys are keen in the future for that, I think it's a good way to actually see how Logic works there as well. Hopefully this was better than me just going in and pointing to things on Logic and telling you what they do. This is a way for you to actually hear how it changed. I didn't even know that Billie Eilish track was there. If I'd known that, I would have used it. But hey, this gives me a chance to show off stuff that I've recorded in the past and some of my talented friends as well. So it was good. Thanks, guys, for giving me the opportunity to use my track that I have here as well. Kaylin, if you're still around, do you have your WebEx room still open, Kaylin? Or if you guys are cool, just to jump off from here. But I think it's good to jump in the WebEx room just so I can hear from everybody before we leave, just to see what you guys thought, if that's okay, if it's still open. I may send Kaylin a text now. But I'm going to jump back there now and see who's there. Hopefully it doesn't break anything. I'm going to stop this actual live stream here, and I'll make sure you guys get that link as well. And I'm going to jump back over to the WebEx.